Dr. Natasha Beck is a parenting expert and the founder of Dr. Organic Mommy, an online resource focused on pregnancy, parenting, and non toxic living. I am fascinated by her journey and inspired by what she shares with her followers and community. Dr. Beck has a wealth of knowledge on parenting and healthy living, and our focus today will be where those two collide the most in the kitchen. Is it possible to get your kids to care about healthy food? Why is it so important in the first place? Can you engage your kids in such a way that they are excited about helping in the kitchen? And where do you start? If you are tired of having the challenging eat your vegetables conversation around the dinner table over and over, you're not going to want to miss this episode. Let's get started. Can you start by talking a little bit about how you got started on this journey? I read that your son contracted a viral and bacterial infection at just 7 weeks, and that sort of kickstarted the journey for you. Can you share that story with us?
Sure. Well, it starts a little bit before that when I was working in clinics over at USC, when I saw the impact of diet and lifestyle on the children that I was evaluating. And, I found that, that connection was so important. And so then I started to clean up my diet and, look at trying to find things that are more organic. And then as I went along in my journey, when I first had my first child, and when he was 7 weeks old, and he did contract a viral and bacterial infection, and the doctors had no idea what was going on, what was wrong. I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning and he had a fever. And I rushed him to the ER and they tested him for everything, couldn't find anything, but they were just having all the specialists come in, and they weren't sure what was going on. And he was spitting up. He wasn't, taking in the breast milk, and they wanted me to take him off. And it was tough. And he was in the hospital for 29 days. And that was kind of that led me to go down this path of like, okay, what am I surrounding him in his environment? Because it's got to be something environmental. And so I started tackling everything from cleaning products to toys to, the containers that we use to, store food, to the cookware, to our air, to our water. And so I've kind of gone down that path. And that's where I've kind of been here.
Wow. That resonates with me.
Yeah.
I also, my second child actually contracted a virus when he was 6 days old. Did they ever find out what virus that your son had?
They never found out. And, luckily he was okay. But I'm, the silver lining behind it is that, I learned a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Continued me on my journey. I already saw the impact of diet and lifestyle on children, but I wasn't as tied in with the impact of the environment, of the environmental toxins that, we are overwhelmed with, especially children, like your body can only handle so much, and it comes out in different ways, and so, they've got eczema and asthma and food allergies and whatnot. And so those are the things that people dismiss and say, oh, those are normal.
Yeah. Well, this modern day and age, they unfortunately have become so normal. I was just calling we just moved to a new city recently, and I was calling around to different pediatricians to look for one. And on the voicemail, before I could even talk to a doctor, they must have said 4 times or so, if your child has ADHD and you're calling to refill their medication, this is the line. And they kept talking about that. And I was like, is it that big a problem at your practice that you guys need to have a whole voicemail message for it and say it 4 times?
Yeah.
I
find that people aren't, physicians, they only, in medical school, you get I think it's 19 hours of classes in nutrition, and that's it. And, I mean, only doctors who have like a passion for it are
Right.
actually learning more about environmental toxins, about nutrition and how they impact our children's health. And so they're not able to really provide that information. And so a lot of it just ends up falling back on the parents or the caregivers to really dive down deep and do the research, which most of us just don't have the time to do.
Yeah, well, that's why pages like yours um, are so, helpful for parents who you don't really know. There's no manual
Yeah, there
when
is
you.
no manual. But that was one of the reasons why I started the page, because I wanted a page that was non-biased and just provided research based evidence on things that, I went and looked up products myself. I only promote the things that I actually use. I have tons of
Mm-hmm,
companies constantly reaching out, and most of them I say no to.
mm-hmm.
And everything that I make from the page goes to charity. So,
I saw that and I love that too. Can you tell me more about that?
sure. I'm very blessed to be in our situation that we are in. And so I just wanted, a non-biased resource. I found that I was, looking at different pages and finding that I wasn't sure if I could trust what the
Mm,
person was saying. Like, are they getting
mm-hmm,
paid to do this? Do they actually really use this?
mm-hmm,
And when I would go look up those products, I wasn't really aligned with them. And so I wanted something that I felt comfortable promoting myself.
mm-hmm,
And so I do the research, and how I do that is, a lot of the times I'll email the companies.
mm-hmm,
I'll find out, exactly what all the ingredients are, where they source things from. Do they do third-party testing for, a number of things, including like heavy metals? Can I see their certificate of analysis? Is
mm-hmm,
it a third party? Is it not done by their own company?
mm-hmm.
Is it signed? Is it dated? That kind of thing. And
Wow.
so that just helps make me feel more comfortable about what I'm giving my kids. So
Mm-hmm,
whatever I end up promoting are things that I give my kids and
mm-hmm.
things I do that work for my family.
Right. And so, um, what kind of charities do you
Oh,
give
sure.
back to?
So there are three charities. One of them is Baby to Baby, which provides basic essentials for children ages 0 to 12 years.
Hmm.
Things like diapers, wipes, school backpacks, things that,
Mm-hmm.
often we take for granted.
Yeah.
And most children just don't have access to those things.
Mm.
Uh, Another organization is called the Environmental Working Group,
Oh,
which I'm
love
very
them.
proud. Oh, great. Very passionate about them. Um, and so Ken Cook, the founder of EWG, is just so incredible and so knowledgeable. And he is just trying to spread awareness to consumers to take control of what they purchase and they
Mm-hmm.
have, tons of databases where they can, search for products. And, he's also trying to push for change in the government as well.
Mm.
So the organization is just incredible. And then the
Right.
last one is Charity Water, which provides clean water to people all over the world.
Yeah, I know that one too. It's a wonderful organization as well. I love Environmental Working Group. They have an app, or maybe they have more than one, but I have an app and I like to use it every once in a while. Um, as you know, but I don't know if anyone else listening, if I go into like, maybe I'm on vacation and forgot sunscreen and all the only options I have is to go into CVS and I don't know any of the brands. So you can
They
look
have
up.
a database where you can actually type in a product. They have a
Mm-hmm,
cleaning database where you can type in a cleaning product to see how it rates, and then it rates
mm-hmm,
it based on, the types of ingredients that are, listed in the products. They also have a water database. You can type in your
right.
zip code to see like what's in your water and what type of water filtrations would be best for your area.
Mm-hmm.
Great source of information.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much. It means a lot. It does mean a lot that you also give back. I've heard from other people who are also fans of yours that one of the first things a friend of mine said is that she loves that you give everything back to charity.
Oh, thank you.
Um, okay, so coming from a medical and public health background, you know that there are a ton of factors that we could look at when we measure health for our kids. Um, can you talk to us about why you chose to focus your work and life on nutrition specifically? I got a bit of the background here, but tell me more about the nutrition.
I think people just don't, I think they take it for granted. The refined sugars, the refined oils, the additives, the
Mm,
preservatives, the artificial dyes, those all have such an impact on on our well-being, on our children's behavior.
mm-hmm,
They found even starting in the 1970s that artificial dyes were impacting children and finding that they tended to exhibit more hyperactivity symptoms, similarly found in ADHD. And so some physicians who work with their patients and, you know, change their diet, they can really help improve a lot of those symptoms. And,
mm-hmm,
fortunately, in today's world, we are just the quick fix. Here's the medication. I'll see you in a couple months and we'll see how you do. Um,
mm-hmm,
and I'm very thankful that there's medications out there, but that shouldn't be the only solution,
mm-hmm.
or the only solution.
Yeah, well, I think it's difficult because the system that's what we're set up to do, with the doctors having 10 minutes, 15 minutes max to speak to a patient, and their toolkit is prescriptions.
Yeah. And unfortunately, that's how they're trained in medical school. Like they just don't have the knowledge to do that. And it's hard to put that all on a physician to know every prescription, every medication, to know every ailment. And then on top of that, to know all, how nutrition impacts you as well. So it's unfortunate that it's just not as, widespread as it should be. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so it stings that it falls, onto the parent to kind of dive into the research, find a physician who is passionate about that, who's done extra work on the side to kind of really truly understand the impact
Mm-hmm.
of food on our diet, food on our well-being rather.
Yeah, and that's really difficult to do. I mean, I'm told you I'm doing that right now. I have a whole spreadsheet of pediatricians, and unfortunately, most of the ones I would that align with the way I want my kids to be cared for cost thousands of dollars a year in a membership fee.
Yeah,
Because, yeah.
it's tough, and doctors don't get paid as much, and then
Mm-hmm.
it's tough with insurance and tough when like they have to spend their own resources to kind of study more and spend more time with the patient. It's just so unfortunate.
Mm. So you say that you're not a chef, but the recipes on your website and on your Instagram look great. I've tried a few of them myself. How do you find cooking inspiration and keep the meals fresh for your family?
That's a great question. I have tons of friends that I've actually met through Instagram. So
Yeah.
quite a community there of moms that are similarly aligned. I love Kayla from the Family Food Project, Catherine McCord from Weelicious, Pamela Salzman, who I've taken her cooking classes in Los Angeles, once a month for I don't know how many years, and
Mm,
really taught me like the foundation and the basics, and then playing with things,
mm-hmm.
and I have some friends who are also really great chefs, and asking them lots of questions and messing around in the kitchen, I think is you know, the fun thing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's great. Thank you for sharing those accounts. Some of those I have not heard of, so I'm excited to look them up. Again, that's just another thing that's so nice about having this community online, that people can easily um, figure things out and do one step at a time. It's quite remarkable.
Yeah, I know social media can be tough, and seeing how everybody seems to have it all together on social media, but you're only getting a 15-second snippet of their life. Um, but what I've found is that there's such a great sense of community of people who align with my values,
Mhm,
that I've found, and they have great, information on all of their pages. So
mhm.
very
Yeah.
purposeful in who I follow.
Mm. Hey, I sometimes think about you when I'm about to lose my temper, or when I do lose my temper, and I'm like, I don't think she does that.
Oh no, I definitely lost my temper this morning.
Oh,
You know,
yeah?
oh, 100%. And I lost my cool, and I had to apologize to my children and own up, saying like, I'm actually really not upset with you. I've got something else going on
Mm.
that I didn't need to share with them. Uh,
Hmm.
and that I'm upset about that. And I put that on them, and I was
Hmm.
sorry, and I really don't like yelling. And I'm not mad at them. And so I just owned up to it and apologized. And, they said, thank you for telling me, and I closed the loop by letting them know that I love them and it's my job to take care of them. And that's, apologizing to your children is so important. And I think that's often overlooked and seen as weak, or that makes you more vulnerable, or lose your power.
Mm.
But in reality, it just provides an open relationship with your child of respect.
Yeah. And it probably, well, it teaches them, right, to know how to apologize when they're, doing something wrong or as they get older. Because, like you said, I think, well, I don't know if you said this, but I was thinking a lot of people don't know how to apologize, or they're not comfortable doing it.
They don't. And often it's because, our parents, our grandparents' generation, they just didn't apologize for things that they did. But I find if you don't model it for your children, and and if you expect them to do something, how are they going to do it if you don't do it yourself? And so, it's important to have that respectful relationship with your children. And one way of doing that is to own up to your mistakes and own up when you mess up, and you're bound to mess up.
Yes. Yes. Okay, so let's talk about a couple of practical tips for our listeners. How can families create an environment where kids want to be in the kitchen? And also for us to want them to be in the kitchen, because again, another, thing that I sometimes feel guilty about myself is that sometimes it's a lot when I am like, okay, we're going to make muffins. And then I'm stressed out doing it because I've got 3 children with all their little hands and dropping things. And yeah.
Yes, 100%. So first thing I want you to know is, when you're working with kids in the kitchen, the way to get them to be helpful is to allow them to help you. Because if you're constantly telling them, no, go play, they're older and you want them to help, they're not going to want to, because they're thinking, well, I was told not to help.
Oh, that's true.
You want to invite them in and, not force them. But if they take an interest, definitely have them come in. But I find the problem is that parents are constantly correcting the child. Oh, you have to do it this way. Oh, pour it over here like this. Don't spill. Don't do this. And so it's not a pleasant experience for them, nor is it a pleasant experience for yourself. And so you want to have an open mind about it, and think about when your child is from 18 months to 6 or 7. It's the training camp. They're not at the World Series yet.
Yeah.
They're not there. Right now, they're just training and learning, and trying not to overcorrect them. They will model and look at you and see oh, mom's mixing it this way. All right, I'm going to try to do it this way as well. And as long as you are focused on what you're doing and being really calm, they will then join in with that. If you tend to be more frantic and think, oh my God, you're spilling here, and oh, this is not the way to do it. Oh, you over, poured some of this, and now the recipe is all messed up. They will feel that, and you see the sense and the difference in my tone of voice, where I'm really calm right now. But if I'm really overwhelmed and anxious about something and constantly on them, it changes the environment in which, the child is wanting to learn to help, wanting to learn to cook, and be actively involved in preparing the food that you guys all eat together.
So how do you set yourself up for that? I mean, I guess it's natural to you because you do it.
Sure.
I looked away for a second. Did you say yes or no?
Yeah, sure. No.
Natural.
First, I like to create stations.
Okay.
So I'll give you an example. I was making dinner, and I created a station of having to brush the potatoes and clean them. And then I had a cutting board station with the knife to cut them. And then I had something else that I'm working on. And my children didn't have to come in, but if they wanted to, it was already all set up. So my children then came in, and I set up this station to wash the potatoes, which my 5-year-old daughter could easily do, scrubbing them. And then my 7-year-old was slicing them. And he began to slice them differently than I would. They weren't all even pieces. And that's all right. I was slicing them with him. And so I took a few and sliced them. And then he started to look at how I was slicing them. And he looked back at his and I looked at mine. I don't say to him, oh, you're not doing it correctly. Or when he finally did pick it up and he started slicing them and tried to do it a little bit more evenly, I didn't say, oh, good job. That's how you do it exactly. Because when
Oh,
you overpraise like that, the child, doesn't always feel like it's super sincere when you're constantly saying good job. That external praise feels like, oh, well, if they're saying good job to me now, does that mean I was doing a bad job before? So it can actually
wow.
be shaming. And just a slight nod or a smile,
Mm-hmm.
oh, you're slicing them how I am. If you really feel the need to say something, but in reality,
Mm-hmm.
you don't need to. Your child, all children have an inner drive. Unfortunately, that inner drive gets squashed by adults in their lives. And by trying to provide external rewards or external praise, you want them to take ownership of what they're doing inside. So when they start to see, oh, I'm slicing it on my own, I'm doing it like mom is, they're
Mm-hmm.
proud of themselves already. And don't
Yeah.
assume they're proud, but you just giving them that slight acknowledgement. I went to my son, I was like, just like that. And he was like, I'm slicing them like you, mom. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, you are. And I was just very calm and present in the kitchen. And I didn't need to overly gush about it.
Mm.
My middle child chimed in and she's like, I'm brushing the potatoes. I see you're brushing the potatoes on your own. And then she smiled and she's like, yeah, I am.
Okay.
She took ownership of what she was doing, you know? And then the youngest wanted to join in at some point,
Mm-hmm.
the 2.5-year-old. And so she started mixing the potatoes with the oil and all the spices.
Mm-hmm.
I found things for her to do, but of course her hands were super messy.
Mm-hmm.
I was expecting that. I was
Yeah.
expecting there to be spills, and
Mm-hmm.
we're all going to work together to clean it up.
Mm-hmm.
When kids say like, "I don't want to clean up, I want to go play," I get it. Playing is fun. The sooner we clean up together, the faster we'll be, and then you'll have more time to play. And so I try not to threaten them. Like the one of my key things that I say to parents is instead of threatening with a if you do this, empower them with a when you do this. So
Mm.
when you clean up, then you may go play.
Mm-hmm.
And so that simple switch in the language, especially in the kitchen, but really anywhere, um, really helps empower the child and gets rid of that, tension that there will be when you're threatening. And you can use that even with adults. And so I find that simple shift in the language is helpful.
That's great advice. And sometimes for me, I tend to get more at this moment in time. I hope this will change. I think it's creating a habit. Um, but I want to be calm and I get more like frantic.
Well,
Um,
give yourself more time. So, like, instead of starting dinner at 4 when you have dinner at 5, start at 3 or start when, some of your kids, if your kids are taking a nap, set everything up. You can have it all set up and have it all prepped or ready to go. So that way
mhm,
you're not frantically feeling like, oh my gosh, dinner's not going to be ready. We're not going to have anything. But having it prepared. So moving up time before you actually make dinner or doing it on, the weekends when you do have more time if you're working during the week is helpful. And
mhm.
realizing that you know, sometimes things will be late,
Yeah, yeah.
and part of being in the kitchen and helping, you're spending quality time. So you may not have as much time to read books, to play afterwards, but you were doing that in the kitchen. There's so much learning going on in the kitchen, and your children will model that. And if you really are pressed for time and you're like, oh my goodness, like I'm not going to have dinner ready, grab some raw veggies, grab some dips. Your kids are starving. Oh, this is what we have. I've got some veggies here. And we make like a little crudité,
Yeah.
not quite ready. I didn't get the potatoes or whatever we were making into the oven quick enough. They're still roasting away.
Hmm.
I've got some veggies, and that's a great way, to getting nutrients into your kids is to have veggies at every meal. You know,
Hmm.
serve it early on. So like when they're starving, that's what we've got. No, I want this, I want that. I know. I hear you. We have to eat lots of different foods for our body to grow.
Hmm.
And my job to make sure you grow.
I love it. Hey, I heard you say that. How old's your oldest?
My oldest is 7.
A 7. Okay. What time? At what age did you start letting them use like a knife?
Oh,
And then I was going to ask like what kind of knife you use
yeah.
because I love it that
So
you're getting him involved.
at 3 years old, I have them use a knife, but I have them use like a butter knife.
Hmm.
So chopping up like mushrooms,
Something soft.
things off like zucchini,
Okay.
and as they get the hang of it, as they're
Yeah.
made consistent with it, when they're 3.5, that you can give them harder things, and they'll figure
Hmm.
out how to use that butter knife.
Yeah.
Carrot up, chop a zucchini up. They'll get there. It's going to be completely uneven, but do
Yeah.
it to make
Yeah.
soup.
That's a great idea.
And do it to make soup. And then as I have a post coming up on this, because so many people have asked me like the progression of knives, so I've literally picked out all the different knives and the different ages in which you could introduce those to your children.
Hmm.
After the butter knife, there's like a plastic knife that's a little bit sharper, but not too sharp that they can actually use. That's got some serrated edging that
Right.
makes. And then from there, there's a great knife from Opinel, Opinel. And it's actually shows you how to hold the knife properly. And it's
Oh,
ergonomically designed for the child to hold, and it's sharper. So they're definitely, more equipped to use that. And then a smaller paring knife, and then you just go from there.
wow. Never heard of a knife like that, but that makes total sense because they do it with scissors.
They do.
Yeah. Are your kids picky eaters in any way, or have they just been raised to eat everything?
So I try to refrain from the word picky because
Okay.
you very much take ownership of that. So when
Yeah.
you call your kid picky or you think your child is picky, your child will very much pick up on that. They'll
Yeah.
feel it. Oh, my child won't eat that. They hear you. Even a
Yeah.
baby, even at 6 months, at 8 months, 9 months, they hear you.
Hmm.
The receptive language, the comprehension, the understanding comes on before the expressive language, before they can actually speak. So they're understanding everything you're saying. So what I like to refer to it as children tend to be more cautious or more
Yeah.
adventurous. I have some
Yeah.
of
I love that.
I have a cautious child and I have a couple of adventurous children. And you'll see that the child who's more cautious, they tend to be more cautious in lots of different facets of their life. The child who's more cautious about trying new foods may be more cautious when entering a new environment. They're still staking with you. I'm not ready to say hi yet. Or to say hello, give me a minute. I need a little bit more time to observe my environment, and then I'll walk in.
Mm.
So you'll see that with your cautious child, or they'll see like, oh, mom, are you watching me? I'm getting into the pool. Like, I need
Mhm.
you to watch me. There's your cautious child.
Oh, yeah. I have
Yes.
one of those.
Yes. So that cautious child may be more hesitant to try new foods. And so I have a ton of tips on, getting your kids to eat healthy and trying new foods. The number one thing is modeling it. So, if you're not eating those foods, they're not going to. But if they see you're sitting down with them and visibly enjoying your food, they're more likely to participate. Uh,
Hmm.
Having vegetables at every meal, you know, who said that vegetables shouldn't be in breakfast? I don't know. You'll often see, when I make little buckwheat pancakes, I'll have little pink radishes sticking up in the bunny ears as bunny ears. They
Mm.
may not eat them, but they're there. And then eventually they'll start to try them. They might dip them in the maple syrup and eat it with a radish. Great, and that's
Yeah.
fine. And parents often tell me, well, I don't want it to go to waste. Best thing I have is a dog who loves veggies, so it works out well for me.
Hmm.
So she will eat all of those scraps up, or I eat them myself, or I compost them. Uh,
Hmm.
so I find that parents are often eating all the leftover scraps of things, and I definitely do that myself. But I like to make like a veggie loaded oatmeal. Oatmeal is delicious, but you can grate in some fresh zucchini and carrots, and it's orange and green sprinkles, and sometimes you don't even see them in there, and they're very bland. They just often add like a nice sweetness. The carrots add some sweetness to it, and you cook it down with some Ceylon cinnamon, add a little bit blackstrap molasses in there for some extra iron, and then you top it with all the fun toppings. And so like making it more interactive for the child. So on the weekend, you can have a toppings bar where you have frozen wild blueberries, you've got almond butter, you've got goji berries, you've got chia seeds, you've got shredded coconut, and they can put whatever they want in their oatmeal, and it makes it more fun.
Wow.
I will say be mindful of how much you serve your child, because there's a lot of psychology behind it. If you're giving them such a huge bowl of oatmeal, they're like often overwhelmed. Oh, I can't eat all of this, or take 2 bites, they're done. So they start with about a fourth of a cup of oatmeal, or a half
Yeah.
max for
Yeah.
your little kids. And when they see that there's only a little bit, it's much easier for them to actually eat. You go in for seconds, thirds, etc.
That's a great tip. I love it. And I really like that you don't like, I never thought of it, but I don't like labels. And we talk about that kind of a lot here
Sure.
because a lot of children with, neurological conditions have labels put on them. And I personally never liked it. We would never call our son special needs, but hadn't thought about it for picky eaters. But you're right. They
internalize it.
Yeah. And then they just, they identify with that forever, pretty much.
Yeah. Very much so.
Okay. So a big change can feel overwhelming, even though we often know that we need to make it. Like, for instance, people might be listening and thinking, gosh, that sounds amazing, but they might be overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Because maybe they can't do all the stuff that you're doing at this moment today. To help this focus on health and a happy family kitchen feel doable for our listeners, where do you recommend usually to people that they start?
Great question. So everything that I show on my page, I want to say one thing. It's taken years for me to get there. So what I'm sharing, you've got to pick and choose what works best for your family.
Right.
B, you've got to see where you're at in your journey, because everybody is at a different starting point. So if you're at a point where you're eating a lot of processed foods and really not organic, let's try to switch it up. So when you go to the store, check out the EWG Clean 15 and Dirty Dozen. Try to find things that are organic that are on the Dirty Dozen, such as kale and strawberries. Buy those organic and bring them into your home. So that's one place to start. If you've got some fruits and veggies in your diet, and you're doing all right on that, try to start introducing veggies throughout each meal. And so if your child's like stuck on cereal every morning, let's try to make some pancakes on the weekend and then toast them up during the week. That's where you don't have as much time. Make some green pancakes, add in some spinach into it with, some oat flour, eggs, and a little bit of milk. Plant-based milk is what I use, and throw in the blender, pour them up on, your cast iron, and there you go. Just finding small ways, I think, to make changes and to not feel overwhelmed by it, I think, is to just tackle one thing at a time. Like, all right, we eat meat almost every day. Let's try to do once a week where we have a plant-based meal, and we figure out how we have no meat, no dairy, and we're just going to have like a really like beautiful like red lentil dal dish, or tons of roasted veggies, and some, like sokas, that's made out of like a chickpea flour and water. Those are like my go-to when I'm rushing, when I'm late.
I don't know them.
So you take like half, it's like equal amounts of chickpea flour and water, and you can put in different spices if you want. And they're little like savory pancakes.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Yum.
But it doesn't taste like that chickpea grittiness. It just honestly tastes like a regular pancake, but more savory. So finding, where you're at. So like adding that one meal in a week, if that's where you're at, if you find that your kids are constantly snacking, let's have more set times, like where there's a nice rhythm to your day, where you've got your breakfast, you've got your morning snack, you've got your lunch, you've got your afternoon snack, and then you've got your dinner. And recognizing that if your children are struggling eating dinner, maybe you move dinner up a little bit earlier and get rid of the snack, or have a lighter snack and keep dinner a little bit later. Or when children are struggling to eat, I find that milk consumption often gets in the way. check out like how often your child is drinking milk. If they're 3 years old and still guzzling down like 16 ounces of milk a day, it's a lot of,
Mm-hmm.
they're not going to be full, you know, and often pediatricians are, telling, you know, their patients, oh, you need tons of milk and that's the only way to get calcium. And that information is so old, unfortunately. And, you really don't need that. My kids, they, went from breastfeeding. I stopped a little bit over a year, and, we made some plant-based milks, and then they were kind of over it,
Mm-hmm.
and so when you're consuming so much milk, just be mindful of that, especially if your child has free, leverage to drink the milk whenever they want. So if they get to carry around their straw little cup and carry it with them all the time, they're just drinking milk all the time. They're never going to be hungry. Same
Right.
goes for water. Kids often overdrink and overhydrate with water unconsciously because
Really?
they're cantering around those straw cups. And if you actually look at them, they're 8 ounces, 12 ounces. 12 ounces of water is a lot of water. And so they're actually filling up on water, and unconsciously drinking it when they're just bored. You want your child to pay attention to their cues of their body, what their body is feeling. So I'd rather your child come up to you and say, Mom, I'm thirsty. Mom, I want water. Mama, wawa. And then I'll give you an open cup, give you some water. They'll drink it right there,
Mm-hmm.
and then go continue playing. Oh, I'm still thirsty. I'll come back 5 minutes later. I want a little bit more.
Mm.
Rather them do that than constantly just have free access to like these large bottles. That's
Mm-hmm.
actually why I love this company called Easy Peasy. Um, the inventor behind it, Dawn, is a speech and language pathologist, and she was so purposeful in the design of this open silicone cup, that it was only 2 ounces that you could put in because a child would spill it otherwise. And it's weighted on the bottom, so it was more um,
Oh.
tip over. The design on the top of the rim, it has little bumps on there so the child can actually feel the placement.
Mm-hmm.
For children that have issues with textures or mindful of what types of silverware and tools that they have at their disposal. She was so cognizant in the design. Even when she graduated it to the toddler cup, it's really only 4 ounces of liquids that actually fit in there with, a straw that fits in, or you can just drink it as the open cup, because children don't need that much.
Right. Right.
As adults, we're drinking 8 to 12 ounces of water at a sitting, but your child does not need that much.
Mm.
Obviously, it could depend if like they're more active, if they're off playing soccer, you'd give them more water. But as a 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-old, have walking around with those 12 ounces of water. That's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good tip. Okay. So I'm a little curious. Everyone's situation is different, but I personally find sometimes that people are always giving my kids. Do your kids go to school during outside the home?
Yes.
Yeah. I find that kind of just not, maybe it's not just school, but in society, people are always giving my kids things like food. And if I'm trying to be, clean up our diet or find out that there's, some sensitivities, I kind of struggle with that. Do you
It's
have
tough.
any tips on that?
It's really tough, especially, I mean, my children have a ton of allergies and sensitivities, so I have to be really mindful of that. Luckily, they go to a school that is very respectful of that
Mm-hmm.
and understanding. But with public schools, more and more public schools are not actually serving food, even at birthday parties or whatnot, just because of the liability. And if you do find that your school is providing food for your child, I'd go back to them and talk to the head of the school and say, like, what if something happened that you gave my child and they choked on it? Or if you gave my child something that they're sensitive to and it, messed up their behavior that day and they struggled in school and then they got, in trouble for it. So I'd really try to be as mindful as you can to speak to your teachers, to, the head of your school, and
Mm-hmm.
that they're clear on what you are offering to your child. Because in this day and age, they really have got to be more mindful of it because there's so much liability. As far as, going to birthday parties, hanging out and doing play dates, it is tough. So one thing I do for birthday parties, I make like a snack plate and I get to eat it on the way there. to the birthday party. And so I fill them up with lots of, foods that are healthier and things that they like. And so by the time they get to the birthday party, they're not as hungry. I
Mm-hmm.
even make them a smoothie. Smoothies are a great way to get nutrients into your body. Catherine McCord of Weelicious, she wrote the Smoothie Project, and she has tons of great recipes in there.
Oh.
And that's a great place to start. I make my own recipes, but I just play with it. And so if you just need an actual written guide,
Mm-hmm.
project is the way to go. And that's a great way to get nutrients in. And they're delicious smoothies, and you can make them fun. You can hide cauliflower in there, even though I am very mindful of not hiding vegetables with my kids. And I don't recommend you doing that either. What I recommend you doing is having the child make the smoothie with you.
Mm-hmm.
So make the smoothie, drink it on the way to a play date, on the way to a birthday party, and they tend to be more filled up.
Mm-hmm.
But you also don't want to restrict your child so much so, because that will backfire on you. So yes, do I let my kids have artificial dyes? I try to avoid that. I try to bring my healthier alternative, and not make it all the time.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, um, and so you just have to pick your battles. Like
Right.
Easter, like I'll get some, I give my kids candy, but I try to find the ones that don't have artificial dyes. And so they're
Mm-hmm.
just happy about that. And the real thing that you really want to make sure you do is to educate your child, because soon enough, they're not going to be around you all the time. They're going to have to make decisions on their own. So I've
Mm-hmm.
taught my children that, hey, like there's different ways of eating candy. There's ones that have artificial dyes and ones that don't. Let's taste the difference. Let's
Mm-hmm.
attention to how our body feels, and what do the artificial dyes do? Do you understand what all these words mean on the back of, the label where the ingredients are? Oh, I don't know what that means, mommy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to eat something that I don't know what that means. I
Mm-hmm.
something that I know what it means. I don't, and so I talk to them about that. So it's really about getting them to pay attention to how they feel,
Mm-hmm.
how their body feels, getting to pay attention. Well, what's on the back of that label? What does that mean? What's in it? And in my big saying is like, if you're going to eat foods that don't help you grow, eat the good stuff. So
Yeah.
instead of eating you know, like some kind of sour candy,
Mm-hmm.
artificial dyes and tons of sugar that, you've got, GMO sugar beets and all that's in there. I'd rather you eat like a freshly baked, cookie,
Mm-hmm.
like chocolate chip cookie. I'd rather at least there's some whole ingredients there,
Mm-hmm.
So pick and choose if that
Mm-hmm. So, and also, you know, pick your battles, you
yeah,
said.
pick your
So,
battle. You're not always going to win, but like if you're going to go out and they want to eat all the food that their friends are eating, first I say all families are different. We have our snack plate here. This is what we're having.
mhm,
Secondly, if they're going to engage in eating other foods, like at a birthday party, they have to sit down. They can't just grab the food and walk around. And
oh,
I explain the reason behind that is because it's my job to make sure you're safe, and I can't keep you safe when you're eating food, walking around, because you're at risk for choking. So you have
mm,
to be seated. Most kids want to play at birthday parties. So, they're not going to want to spend as much time sitting down. So they'll take a few bites of the pizza and like, okay, that's it. They'll run around.
mm,
So obviously if your kids have, restrictions in their diet and it's not as much fun, if they have allergies, like my daughters are allergic to dairy, I bring alternatives for them so they don't
mm-hmm.
get left out.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I think the artificial food dyes is one that gets me a lot.
Yeah, it's tough, and they're in everything, and they're in a lot of packaged foods and foods that you'd be surprised that they'd be in there.
Can you share why artificial food dyes are no good for our kids?
Sure. So as I've said, that they've, gone through and they've found that it's increased hyperactivity. It's been really connected to a number of different ailments with children, from hyperactivity to having difficulty sleeping to, um, you know, not being as cognitively attuned to things. And so why just put those in there into our diet? If if you can't understand the ingredients, that's my big thing, is just be mindful. Like, always read your labels,
Yeah.
because, it impacts their sleep. It impacts the way they behave,
Just one more thing for them to deal with.
you know, refined sugars. I'm in the middle of reading a book called Sugar Proof Your Kids. And it's just talking about the impact of sugar on our kids, and they're just overwhelmed. The amount of sugar that you don't realize, like if you're grabbing a thing of yogurt, there's probably like 15 grams of sugar in that, and in one sitting, and then you're having like a muffin that's got like 25 grams of sugar. You're already done with your sugar limit for the day. You're above it, and that's it. And that was just breakfast.
And that doesn't include, the natural sugars that are going to come too, I suppose, with every meal.
With every meal, there's sugar. So, it's just being a little bit more mindful and thinking like, all right, I'm overwhelmed. I've got all this sugar in my kid's diet. Just tackle one at a time. And when you're going to the store, if you're used to buying a certain product, turn around, look at it and say like, all right, what can I buy instead? One item at a time. Don't feel overwhelmed and think, okay, I've got to change out my entire pantry. One at a time.
Well, that's perfect. What I think my last question is, I'm heard a lot about in the kitchen. What is it your bath time, like relax time, look like for the kids? Can you explain some of your go-tos for getting them ready for nap or bed?
Oh, sure. So after dinner, everybody contributes. We all, the faster we all clean up, the faster we can get upstairs and start our bedtime routine, which includes reading books, which they all look forward to doing. So we all work together. The 5 and 7-year-olds, they clean their dishes. I'm sitting there cleaning the other ones. And then they're drying them. And the 2.5-year-old brings her dishes to the sink. And the older kids help wash them, and then she puts them away.
But they love that.
Does it happen every time? Is there an argument ever? Of course there is, but I find when you put it and interweave it into your routine and your daily rhythm, it becomes easier over time. And then when they say, I don't want to clean up, yeah, I hear you. It's not as fun. When we clean up the dishes together, we'll get done faster. Then we'll go upstairs and read more books. Right now, we're cutting it a little bit close. We might not have as much time to read 3 books tonight. Right, I'll help more. And I'll go, I'll go clean the dishes. Oh, well, no, I'll put them away. They want to get upstairs and read those books. So I think finding that is really helpful. And I think it just helps calm them down a little bit after dinner. The other thing I find is if my kids are really overwhelmed and I can't get them to calm down, and I know that I'm about to lose it, I'm like, you know what? I'm about to lose it. And I announce that. And I say, it's time for a dance party. I'm like, I put on some music. I'm like, we're just going to dance it out, and my kids think it's silly and fun. Everybody's kind of, before they're about to be at their throats and at each other, all start dancing, and it calms everybody down.
I love that.
Yeah, so I always use that as like something in my toolbox to kind of pull out when I really need it. And then getting them upstairs, when it's consistent, like you've got that natural rhythm to your day, and the bedtime routine is similar at each day. Of course, you can have your 1 or 2 days a week that you're going out to dinner, or you're having friends over, or whatever may be thrown off. But as long as your routine is consistent enough, your kids will jump back in and stay there. You are, the conductor, and they will sit there and follow what's going on. But the second you're out of rhythm, your children will be out, and so you got to be the one to keep the rhythm going. And so getting them up to bath, I think, can be sometimes, the hardest part, because I don't want to take a bath. I don't want to do this, and parents are often like, well, you have to do this. You need to go take a bath. We have to get this done, because parents were exhausted.
Right.
And I think it's just very invalidating to the children, I like to acknowledge them first, to think, okay, I don't want to take a bath. What are they trying to tell me? They're trying to say, like, I'd rather just play. And so I'd sit there, yeah, you really don't want to take a bath right now. I hear you. And I'm trying to pay attention to what's going on. Oh, they were looking at a book, or they're building blocks right now, like while I was getting things ready. And they were in the middle of something, creating something. And I say, yeah, I see. Yeah, you don't want to take a bath. You were in the middle of building like this big castle here. It looks like fun. It's my job. And so I just sit with that for a little bit. I just sit, and they're going to continue building the blocks. And then I tune in back in and I say, it's my job to make sure your body grows. And it's time to get into the bath to make sure we keep our bodies clean. And then eventually we need to rest and sleep so that our bodies grow. I know you really want to keep building that castle. And so we're going to come back to validate that. You're really frustrated that you can't keep just doing this right now because you're in the zone. I get it. And as someone who has ADHD and dyslexia herself, I get it. When you're in that zone, it's tough to like kind of get back into it. So I acknowledge that and say, I'm going to let you keep your castle here. I'm going to put like some, painter's tape all around it or something around it so no one will touch it. And in the morning, you may continue working on it when you get up. And we talk about that. Do you see? So the difference between me saying like, no, you got to stop playing with your blocks. Let's go to bath, versus me acknowledging, yeah, you really want to play with those blocks. I'm going to make sure that you can continue doing it in the morning, and validating that they're frustrated that they can't do it and what they need to do instead. It's just a tweak in the language. And so when you get down to them and you respect them, it just easier to kind of get them to transition.
Well, thank you so much for inspiring me, because it does mean so much to me and other parents who follow you, I'm sure, when I just am losing it or I'm at my wit's end, and I can see that you make it just so simple and easy to follow, and you're a good role model for me. Thank you.
I think you just have to realize that like every parent is going to lose it. Own up to it. Take your dance party out of your tool belt when you need it.
I like that.
And then just validate what they're feeling and what's going on with them. So those are the 3 things I kind of stick with to kind of help get you prepared for bath time. Involving them, including them into the process is the big one. Don't say, well, I'm doing it. Would you like to turn on the water? Which towel would you like to use tonight? Let's go pick out your pajamas. Including them in the process is really important as well.
I love it. Well, so I think I'm wondering if I should talk to you about morning routine too, because now I'm curious about that, or if I should let you go. Are you on a time constraint here?
I've got about 11 more minutes.
11 more minutes. Well,
I don't have time. I didn't finish the nighttime routine per se, but I just kind of gave more general tips.
Yeah. I was going to ask about morning, how you get out of the house.
Answer that.
Yeah, I think mornings are probably for me the most stressful time when trying to be mindful, practice mindful parenting and mindful speaking and all that, getting them prepared for the day. How do you keep it together?
So number 1, I get up before my kids. I would never be able to get out the door unless I got up before my children. So that's my number 1 thing. I have my own self-care that I do. I do a little bit of work in the morning, and then I get breakfast going, and I have everything set up from the night before. I keep all of my kids' school day clothes in the kitchen. Each child has. Otherwise, we're running back and forth from rooms, upstairs, downstairs, or to your kid's bedroom. Even if it's not far away, it's still either not in your eye line. So each child has a basket. I also have toothbrushes downstairs. After breakfast, brush their teeth. So right when they come, out of they get up in the morning, they make their bed. And I start that process with them when they're in their crib. They line up their little lovey dolls and they line them up against the crib. That means they're starting to make their bed.
Mm.
Same when they transition to a bed, pulling the covers back, lining up their dolls. It's not perfect, but
Yeah. It's
it's more the concept of.
yeah, yeah.
And then they come straight down. I don't brush their teeth right before. I brush their teeth after breakfast. And I have that all right there by the kitchen. Each child has their own labeled toothbrush. And I've got a little basket of like hair stuff. And each child has their own basket of clothes. And then the night before, I lay out all of their lunch boxes, snack plates, backpacks, everything's ready to go. So I'm not going around frantic, like, where's this? Where's that? I need to get this. I have a basket of shoes for the kids. So that way they know these are where my shoes are. I can grab them
Mm-hmm.
and get them confused. And I don't have a ton of shoes for them either. So it makes it easy.
Mm-hmm.
They get a couple pairs of shoes and they're good to go.
Yeah.
And so when they're eating breakfast is typically when I'm finishing off lunch. I have most of lunch kind of prepared by the time they get down. And then I'm finishing off while they're eating. They're all sitting down eating breakfast. And then once they're done eating breakfast, lunches are done. Then I kind of come in. I'm like, all right, everybody lines up to brush teeth. Usually I start with my youngest, and then while the older two are getting dressed on their own. I think a lot of it is sometimes parents are like, well, I tell my kids to get dressed and they're just not listening.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the biggest thing, I think. When I'm making lunches and they're not listening and they're saying like, I'm saying to them, oh, it's time to get dressed. I want you to refrain from saying like, you have to get dressed now. We're going to be late, because that's the threat.
Mm-hmm.
What I do is usually with my son, he's the one who gets up a little bit earlier and he sits and he finishes his breakfast usually sooner. I say it's time to get dressed and I continue doing what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
He will appear as if he's not hearing me.
Mm-hmm.
And most of your children will be, but they are actually hearing you. They just take longer to process it. Imagine like your processing speed is so much faster as an adult, your reaction time to get things done. Your kid is not as fast. So they
Mm-hmm.
need time. So I don't take it personally that they seem like they're not listening to me because I know they are. They're just in their own head doing what they're wanting to do. And so I just say calmly, it's time to get dressed. And I continue doing what I'm doing. But I give my kids about 20 minutes. And then about a few minutes later, it's time to get dressed now and continue doing what I'm doing. Now, when they want to come and tell me something, Mom, I need to tell you something.
Mm-hmm.
When you're dressed, then I can listen to you.
That's good.
Win and empower with the win instead of threatening with the if. When
Mm-hmm.
you get dressed, then you may show me your drawing.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of is also helpful. And so I just continue saying it, and then, if they are still not getting dressed,
Mm-hmm.
something else is going on. Then that's take the time to squat down.
Yeah.
Dressed today. What's going on?
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to go to school. I hear you.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on at school that makes you not want to go? And then it turns out like, oh, their best friend is being mean to them or hitting them or hurting them or, making them feel bad. Well, no wonder you don't want to go to school. So when your child seems like they're actively disobeying, they're just not able to communicate what is going on with them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think you just need to pay attention to that and not take it personally.
That's great. Thank you. I'm going to use all of that, especially the when.
Yeah,
when you're dressed.
Simple, yeah. That's the easiest one to do.
I like it. Okay, well, I think that we have given our listeners tons of tips, and this is very complete. But if is there anything else that you would like to share with the Brain Possible community to be complete?
Oh, that's a good question. One of my favorite sayings that I say all the time is, it's not your job as a parent to make your child happy all the time. It's your job to get them to learn how to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. We constantly feel like, oh, our child is upset about something. I need to go in there and fix it. But in reality, you don't. You need to get them to figure out how to process those strong feelings they're having and allow them the space to feel mad, and you're going to be present with them while they do that. Constantly telling them like, oh, you have to be happy, you have to do this and feel better, is telling them like, well, it's not okay to be sad. It's not okay to be mad. Like, all right, I'm going to hold in my feelings. And so the way you set your child up for success is to be that present, stable figure in their life where you're not going to get upset when they're having those feelings, and just sit there. I find that parents often over talk and like just, have word vomit that come out.
Yeah.
Being present and validating what they're feeling and saying, yeah, you're really mad, and just letting them scream it out and just sit there, is the most important thing. If you don't know all the other steps, the number one thing is just let your kid be upset and sit there with them and be that stable figure.
And it sounds like validate. Would you say that's validating their emotion?
Yeah. So sitting with them, being present, and then validating what they're feeling. They just narrate back, like, you seem really upset. Yeah. You're really sad right now, or you're really, really mad. And then, I have steps that outline like, like how a tantrum goes and plays out, where you once they're calm, you can talk to them about it. But before they're even calm, like just sitting there and being present, what is making them feel safe. Because, they cannot understand what you're saying to them when they're freaking out and they're in that fight or flight, And so it's really important as the parent or the caregiver to sit with them and just be present. And when screaming and screaming, yeah, they're mad. They're more mad. They start hitting you. That this is I'm like going down a whole nother topic.
Yeah.
If they were starting to hit you, I would say like, I'd firmly hold them and say like, I won't let you hit me. That hurts me. Scream, scream, scream. They go at it. And that's when I say, yeah, when you're calm, then I can help you. I can't hear you right now.
Back with the when again. I love it.
Yeah. And once they calm down and they're settled, some kids need cuddles, some kids need a little bit of space, your child and which one they need. And that's kind of when I have a whole post dedicated to like walking through the steps of handling like a tantrum. But the reason I bring this up is because often a parent or a caregiver feels the need to kind of go in and fix what the child was feeling. Your job is not to fix their feelings. Your job is to let them process those feelings and accept those feelings and let them figure out, okay, I'm really mad. How do I handle this? How do I calm myself down?
Yeah.
Because in the end, you're not going to always be there. If they're mad at their job, and they're like freaked out at their boss, they can't just come to you and say, Mom, go fix this.
Yeah.
That happens in today's society.
Yeah. Thank you so much for taking the time. And I hope that you have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much, Emily. I had a lovely time speaking with you today.
I hope that you enjoyed our conversation today and that you learned something new. Do you have a question for Dr. Beck? Let us know how we can be useful in your journey. Email us at info@thebrainpossible.com. Also, be sure to check out Dr. Beck's website, drorganicmommy.com. That's drorganicmommy.com. Also, she has an amazing Instagram page, and it is at dr.organicmommy. Check her out and let us know what you think. Be sure to subscribe, follow, and share our podcast if that feels true for you. You may also consider visiting our website for more information on stories, therapies, and products that we think that you will love to help support you in your journey of health and wellness. As always, thank you for spending your precious time with us at The Brain Possible. See you next week and be well.